Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's Zen and Zazen class. Let's share half an hour of sitting together, and after that, I will say some things, and if you like, you can ask questions or share afterwards.
我们前面还是先30分钟坐禅，然后再跟老师一块儿分享。我今天把那个内容发群里面了哈，然后7点半开始我们再一块儿讨论，有问题可以提。
Thank you very much for joining. Today I want to talk about a phrase which in Japanese is read Hishiryo, and it can be translated as non-thinking or also beyond thinking. It appears in a text by Dogen Zenji called Fukanzazengi, but the original is a Chinese koan. I will paste the Chinese text in the chat function.
今天跟老师一块儿分析，就是非思量，还是念非思量啊？那个字儿我没查啊，应该是非思量啊。意思是不想或者是超越思想的意思。这个公案呢，道元禅师之前讲过，但是其实是从中国的一个公案来的，就是老师现在贴到我们那叫什么对话框里面，大家可以自己看一下。我今天下午也放在咱们那个群里面了。
As far as I understand the Chinese text, it means something like once when the master was sitting, a monk appeared and asked him, when you sit stable like a mountain, there are these two quite simple Chinese characters, which in Japanese are you read them gotsu gotsu. I don't know if they're still in use in Chinese. In Japanese, usually you don't use these characters, but obviously they mean kind of the shape of a mountain, a flat mountain. So what the monk asks is, when you sit stable like a mountain in Zazen, what kind of thinking is there? So what do you think about when you do Zazen? And the master replies to this, there's thinking on the ground of non-thinking. Thinking occurs in the state of non-thinking. And the monk asks, what thinking is there in the state of non-thinking? Or maybe he means, how is it possible that there is any thinking in the state of non-thinking? And the master replies with this phrase. It's only 3 characters, and in Japanese you read it Hishiryo, which can be translated as it's beyond thinking, or in one English text I choose the translation letting go of thoughts. It's the letting go of thoughts.
老师简单的就是把就是他贴在我们对话框里边的那个内容翻译了一下，我给大家简单说一下。就是有一次那个师傅在坐禅的时候呢，他有一个小和尚问他，老师，就是那2个字儿我也不认识，有没有人认识那2个字儿？那个2个字儿在日语里面是山的形状的意思哈，怎么念我也不会。就是老师说，就是问那个学生问他，老师，当你坐禅的时候，像山一样坐在那儿的时候，那个你在想什么呀？然后那个师傅说，我在想不想，我在想不要想。然后他的那个小和尚又问他，那什么是那个想不想啊？然后老师就是说这3个字非思量。英语翻译就是我觉得翻译中文哈，因为它本来是从中国来的，可能还好理解一点，但是英语可能有好多翻译。然后老师选的一个翻译就是不想，还有一种翻译其实是超越思想啊。
Those of you who practice Zen in the tradition of Dogen Zenji probably already know this phrase or know part of this koan. It appears in a text called Fukanzazengi, and what you're looking right now here is from the Antaiji website. So on the Antaiji website, there's the English version. You can also read it in German or in Japanese. In the Fukanzazengi, Dogen Zenji first talks about how you can sit the physical posture. So how to cross the legs, how to fold the hands, that you should sit straight. And then he writes this short sentence here. Once you have adjusted your posture, take a breath and exhale fully. Rock your body right and left and settle into steady, immovable sitting. So that's this phrase, gotsu gotsu zajo in Japanese, sitting like a mountain, steady, immovable sitting. Think of not thinking. Not thinking. What kind of thinking is that? Letting thoughts go, or non-thinking. That's Hishiryo. So the question is, how can you translate this? This is the essential art of Zazen. Yes, please.
这一部分是在那个道元禅师的《普观坐禅仪》他写的那个文章里面出现了，就是刚才我们说的这一部分。那个《普观坐禅仪》前面第一部分讲的都是怎么坐禅，像坐姿呀、手怎么放啊、怎么调息啊，然后怎么盘腿啊，哪个腿在下，哪个腿在上。其实前面一部分讲的是基础的坐姿，然后后面就讲了就是这个。然后英语的翻译是直译的，就是直接翻译的，它没有像那个中文一样，就是还有人问啊什么的，没有。英语就是说那个你在做的时候要想，不要去想。那什么是不要去想呢？其实这个就是坐禅的艺术。就是刚才说的是这个。
Right now here we are looking at the original by Dogen Zenji. So actually he wrote it Chinese style. So that's how it looks in his Chinese version. And then on my blog here I have a comparison between, that's kind of the Chinese version when you read it with Japanese. So the phrase we're talking about is this part here. Usually if it's in Chinese style, Japanese cannot read it. And what is interesting is when Dogen Zenji came back from China when he was still 28, he wrote an early version of this text, which is here. And that's more or less, so that's the phrase that's corresponding to the Hishiryo phrase. He is talking about what to do with the mind. And that's more or less a literal copy of an even earlier version of the Zazengi from China. So in China there's a text called Zen and Shingi, and that was authored about 100 years before Dogen. So in the 11th century, and he's copying quite a lot from this text. And also this early passage here is a copy. What he's writing here is basically, after you have adjusted the body, you should take one deep breath. And after that, now he comes to explaining what to do with the mind. After that, in Japanese, you would read this nen okoraba sunawachi kaksu. When there's something appearing in your mind, a thought or an emotion, if there's something coming up in your mind, you become aware of it. You are aware what happens in your mind, and after becoming aware of it, you let it go. When you do this, after a long time, you will forget all N in English would be, well, connections. You will let go all connections, karmic connections, and naturally become one. That is the art of Zazen. Zazen is the big gate of stability and peace. So what's interesting here is he doesn't mention Hishiryo yet. And what he's explaining is much easier to grasp. So he's explaining basically the technique of mindfulness. It doesn't mean to suppress the thoughts, but whenever there's a thought or an emotion coming to your mind, you are aware of it, you're mindful of it, and rather than chasing it or trying to suppress it, you just let it go. And when it disappears, maybe a new one appears. But then if you continue to be always mindful in the present, after a while, you might get more settled, and all of these things, the game, what I usually call the game, you become able to quit the game.
就是普观坐禅仪，这个是道元禅师28岁的时候写的。他那个时候很年轻，他刚从那个中国学习回来之后写的。他其实当时写这个坐禅仪的时候，借鉴了好多中国以前有一个禅院清规有那样一个文章，里面有坐禅仪，它其实里面其实抄了好多就是跟这个里面相似的东西，相似的文章。然后道元禅师在说完那个坐姿之后呢，在大家坐禅之前要先吐气，把气全都吐干净。吐气吐干净完了之后呢，就是我们刚才说的那一段话，就是你心里边升起一个念想应该怎么样。然后他这个文章里写的是念起即觉，什么意思呢？就是说当你开始坐禅的时候呢，会升起一个念想，你在坐禅的时候会意识到有这个想法，意识到这个想法之后呢，你就其实你是在坐禅的时候训练自己，让这个想法走，就是放开、放手、放下，把这个想法放下，不要跟着想法一起走，然后反复，经过长时间这样训练之后呢，你就会有一个很强的，就是你和这个事情，比如说一个事情升起来了，然后你跟这个事情一起走，你一直跟着这个事情在一起的这个连接就会变弱，你就会训练自己呢，让一个念想升起来，然后让它就离开你，不让这个念想打断你，让这个念想就是让那个念想走。其实你在坐禅的时候，经常这样训练之后呢，就会慢慢的自然的合一，就是你和这个自然，你就是自然的合一，你和现实不被你自己的想法所干扰，和现实自然合一。这个就是坐禅的艺术。他一开始的时候，其实你看他一开始写的时候没有提到这个非思量这几个字儿，他其实当时强调的就是我们现在特别就是也挺时髦的一个词儿叫 mindful， 什么意思呀？就是中文怎么翻译呢？就是你要全心全意的做一个事情。他其实在这个时候强调的是这个，他一开始没有提到非思量这几个字儿啊。
So now the question is, why did Dogen cut this mindfulness technique out of the early version and replace it with this very simple sentence, think in the state of non-thinking? How do you do that? It's beyond thinking. Because the later version, we don't really know what to do. How do you do? How do you think on the ground of non-thinking? It's beyond thinking. So what am I supposed to do? While with the early version, there's at least something we can do. We can try to be mindful in the moment, and whenever we become mindful of something, we let it go. And if something new appears, we are aware of it and let it go. And after we continue, then eventually we will come better at it and our mind will settle. I think the problem with this approach, I mean, it's a good approach, especially in the beginning, but the problem is that you always play this internal hotel detective. You're always watching yourself. Am I mindful? Am I doing good? Maybe there's a thought somewhere. Then you become aware of that thought. Then you try to let it go. And then there's the next thought. You're always playing with your own mind, and you never let go of the observer. And this again is once more the Chinese text of the early version, and that's the text with which he replaces it. What does it mean to well, think in the state of non-thinking, or how do they translate it here in this think of not thinking? Actually, translating this phrase is also not so easy. What I heard when I was young in Germany was usually thinking on the ground of non-thinking, or thinking in the state of non-thinking. So in Zazen, it's not about non-thinking. There is thinking. Of course, Zazen doesn't mean to think. When we do Zazen, it's not about that we think about something. We're not supposed to think about something, but also it's not about erasing the thoughts and artificially creating a state of non-thinking. We are already in this state of non-thinking, and thinking appears in this state of non-thinking. How do you do that? Well, actually, you don't do that at all. It's already happening. It's beyond thinking. So the state beyond thinking, or what I say in English, letting thoughts go. That's a phrase by Uchiyama Roshi, opening the hand of thought. It means to neither chase the thoughts nor to try to create a state of non-thinking. You don't think about thinking, and you don't think about non-thinking either. When thoughts come, you let them come, and when they disappear, you let them disappear. You don't chase after them. And the metaphor that's often used for that is, well, the sky, the state of the sky. And there's clouds in the sky. The sky is the state of non-thinking. It's beyond thoughts. But there's clouds, and you don't have to be disturbed by the clouds. You don't have to chase after the clouds, but also you don't have to try to wipe out the clouds. You just allow the clouds to be there. And I think that's basically what is meant with these three characters, Hishiryo. It's the state of the sky. It's the state which is already here. And the thoughts that we have right now, they appear in the sky, but they are not an obstacle to the sky. The sky is not disturbed by the clouds.
说的好好啊，就是那么这个问题就来了哈。你看道文禅师刚回日本的时候，他刚开始其实他没有提到非思量那几个字儿，但是后来的时候他自己就做了修改。他为什么要做这个修改？为什么要加上就是为什么要加上这几个字儿呢？其实老师说，一开始的时候他是告诉了你一个方法，就是你在做禅的时候肯定会有一个念想升起来，然后你在这个念想的时候，你要让这个念想放下，不要跟着它一起走。他其实告诉你一个方法，告诉你了怎么做。这是一开始就是道元禅师他年轻的时候是这么想的。后来他年纪大了之后，他做了修改了。为什么呢？是因为其实他意识到了，我如果把这个写的这么清楚，他告诉你一个方法，那其实你每次在做禅的时候，你会无形当中把自己陷入另外一个游戏当中，就是你在做禅的时候会一直在想，哎，我现在有没有想法？我有了想法之后，我一定要让它走，我要怎么样？我要怎么样？我要怎么样的时候，他当你非常明确的告诉你这个方法之后呢，你又陷入另外一种让这个游戏结束的一个结束，你另外一个怪圈里面，就是另外一个游戏当中了。所以那为什么他后来又加上了非思量这几个字呢？就是说这几个其实它是一个超越思想的。就好像老师是德国人哈，老师他小的时候呢，就是他们就是说让你没有想法的时候，他之前听过一句话是，就是你在没有想法的基础上不要想，你在不要想的你在没有想法的基础上不要想，这个太难了哈。然后就是其实我们都已经是自然的这个状态了。你在自然状态中就是一个没有想法的状态下，你不用再制造一个没有想法的不用再制造一个没有想法的这样一个境界，你本来就是这样的。就老师在翻译就是道元禅师这些书的时候，他借鉴了那个内山宇正老师。我有那个书，大家想看我可以发给大家哈。那本书叫 letting go of your hands 那本书里面，他其实借鉴了那个老师里面的一句话，就是你放手，其实你就已经在这儿了。就好像就是非思量这几个字儿，就好像是天空一样，天空上面飘的云彩来了它就来了，云彩走了它就走了，天空不会因为天上有几块云彩而有其他想法，而被这几块云彩而打乱的。云彩来了就来了，走了就走了。非思量其实就是你就是这片天空，你不要被上面的云彩所干扰，你本来就是这样的，来就来，走就走，你已经是这样的，不用再制造一个好像没有想法的一个境界。大概是这个意思。
Okay, so much from my side about Hishiryo, going beyond thoughts, letting go of thoughts. If you have anything that you would like to share or that you would like to ask, please don't hesitate. Either start directly or write it into the chat. Hasim, please.
First, thank you very much for having this opportunity to practice with you. It's a big pleasure.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. And hi to everyone. And my question is about the technique. Normally, my practice is just sitting. I'm trying. But in the beginning, to still my mind and my body, I count my breaths and I follow my breath. Is that okay in the beginning or during just sitting? When I get lost a little bit, I turn and I count. First, I count my breaths, then I follow my breath, then turn back to just sitting. Is that okay or too much confusing?
No, as long as it's not confusing for you and you don't get too attached to this practice, but you start with it and maybe in between, if you get lost, you return to that. I think there's no problem. Maybe there's some followers of Dogen who say, well, Dogen said it's not good to count the breath, so stop it. But I would say in the beginning, if it helps you, if it's not confusing for you, please, yes, please do it. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
And if in the middle, if I get lost in the talks, can I return, just be mindful of breathing for a limited time, go back to just sitting? So
yes.
That's okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Anything else? Aiko, please.
I have a question to this letting go. Actually, this letting go is the same as letting be, letting everything be.
Yes.
As it is. Like I had when you read the text, I also had the picture of the sky and the clouds, and what came to my mind was that the sky is doing nothing to
Yes.
get rid of the cloud. It is not trying to let it go or push it away, or it's just there. Everything is there in the sky, and everything is happening as it is, and it's like allowing it to be. And whenever you have a thought, you are allowing it to be, and you do nothing with it. And but that's not. But I don't understand what's beyond thinking. Is this the same thing? This allowing everything to be and doing nothing with it? Is this the same as beyond thinking?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it's different from thinking because you allow the thoughts to be, but you don't follow the thoughts. You don't write on the thoughts, so to speak. You let the thoughts be, but you don't think the thoughts. You don't identify with the thoughts. So in that respect, you're beyond thinking. You don't eliminate the thinking, you allow the thoughts to be, but you are not thinking. Just like one metaphor that I often use, it's like when you're Zazen and there's a bird outside of your window singing. Does this disturb your Zazen? Usually not, because you allow the bird to sing and you don't think about what's the meaning of what this bird is singing there, or that bird makes a lot of noise, it's disturbing my Zazen. How can I make the bird stop from singing? And often that's the way we react to our thoughts. Like we say, I'm thinking, I shouldn't be thinking. How can I make myself stop thinking? But then you're not beyond thoughts. Being beyond thoughts means to allow your thoughts to be there just like that bird that's singing. It's not an obstacle for Zazen, and also not something that is tempting you to kind of, well, what's the meaning of this? And you don't write on the thought. But beyond thinking, for me, it's not some mystical state. It just means, well, what you said. You let go, and that means also to let be. Give room, give space to the thoughts without being, how do you say, a play ball of the thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anything else?
还有问题可以提啊，可以帮你翻译。
这个老师，我分享一下我的这个感知啊，就是我以前坐禅的时候，老师就是会想很多东西，然后会跟着他跑，一想就想好久。然后我最近就是会把注意力集中在我的呼吸上面，就是一想到哎，有时候也还是会想自己明天的工作啊，今天干了什么，但是会意识到，哎呀，这个我现在是在坐禅，这些先不想了，然后把注意力集中在自己的呼吸上，这个是可以的吗？就是我会去有意识的去呼吸，让呼吸在身体上走，这个方法行不行？可不可行？就是。
She is sharing her experience before when she just started Zazen. She think a lot, like what happened today and what might work tomorrow. But recently, she started to awareness the thinking. When she awareness, she start to thinking. And she start to pay more attention on her breath and try to control the breath and calm down the mind. Is that good technique? It's a good technique for keep you doing Zazen.
I think that's more or less also what Hasim asked in the beginning. And I would say, yeah, in the beginning, when you start with Zazen and your mind is scattered all over the place, that's an easy way to get more focused, more settled. And also in between when you think a lot and you realize you're not like the sky, just letting the thoughts happen, but actually you are a play ball of the thoughts. You're chasing the thoughts. Then being aware of your breath, watching the breath, or maybe even counting the breath is an easy way to get back into this moment. It's just that you shouldn't become too attached of this. So at one point you should also let go of this observing the breath and telling yourself, I always have to be in the moment. I always have to be here and I have to be mindful. But because then your awareness is very narrow, your focus is very narrow. So if watching the breath helps you to become more settled, steady, then maybe you should try to open your awareness more wide and be not only aware of the breath, but the sounds, what you see here, the whole physical experience, and even when the thoughts return, maybe you should try to just allow the thoughts to be there without following them. But there's no rule that says you must not be aware of the breath. Of course you can be aware of the breath. You can even count the breath if you want to.
爱提知道好，维维姐，老师刚才说，其实第一个人就是第一个朋友，其实跟维维姐提的问题有点像哈，他也是，就是他在坐禅的时候，有的时候就不会走神儿。我一会儿跟大家翻译，就有时候会走神儿，想的只是在坐在这儿，但是你可能老是会想别的。他也是，就是把那个精神集中在呼吸上面，开始数呼吸啊。然后刚才维维姐也是，就是把那个精神放在呼吸上面哈。老师说，其实，在那个道元禅师他之前好像说过，就是坐禅的时候不要数自己的呼吸。但是吴芳老师认为呢，其实你可以数，就是数也没关系，因为坐禅没有一个规定说你必须要这样，你必须要那样。其实你可以数啊，但是其实不光是你意识到了你自己现在有别的想法了，升起一个想法，然后呢，你意识到你应该呼吸哈，关注呼吸，你也应该意识到你听到了什么，就你周围的一些声音啊，还有你周围的一些环境啊，你看到了什么，面前的墙啊，或者是你意识到你后面有什么，其实这些你应该放开你的这个意识，都关注到这些，不只是呼吸，这些都要关注到，然后慢慢的，不要对呼吸是一种方法，但是不要对呼吸这种方法有依赖性，就是你一有想法就马上回到这儿，这样也不好，你应该把你的意识放开，放得更开一些，不只是呼吸这上面。当然其实大家都有自己不一样的方法，就是在坐禅的时候，不管是哪种方法，都不要太有依赖性，还是要把意识放开。然后坐禅也没有什么规则，就是一定要这样或一定要那样。
这只是我的一个方法，要不然我会跟着那个想法跑，会越跑越远。
Andrea wrote a question into the chat function. I always feel to not become a play ball. I need to be the detective. So how to get rid of the detective without becoming the play ball again? That's a difficult question, and I think it's one of these questions where it's really hard to teach the middle way. You kind of, just as Andrea said, you tend to go either into the one direction or the other direction. So either you do not enough and your Zazen is just half an hour of thinking thoughts, or you do too much and you become this tense, almost neurotic detective. I have to be mindful, I have to be mindful, I have to be mindful. And then maybe it works, but your focus is very narrow, and also you're doing mindfulness. It's not happening in a natural way. It's almost like sports. You become very good at this mindfulness sports, but it's not really happening natural anymore. And I think you have to kind of go both ways until you find that there's a very thin line in between. Maybe in the beginning you're either a play ball of the thoughts or you are this kind of neurotic detective. But maybe after a while you find this state where there are thoughts, but you're not a play ball of the thoughts. You don't have to play the detective to still be this guy. But maybe you just need to go in between, and maybe some days you don't do enough, other days you do too much. But after a while, I think you get a feeling for just the right. I think it's the same with a lot of things, like for example, also yoga. Yoga also, there's the same thing. Sometimes you just do too much, and sometimes you don't do enough. But there is a line in between. It's just very hard to find that line in between. But just because it's difficult to find the line, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Of course, it exists, but you need some practice and you will sometimes slip and fall. There's somebody looking from the top of the computer into the... Any other questions? Anything else you would like to share? If not, here it's already 9:07 in the evening. So if you have no other questions, I would say thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing. And we can see each other next week. Same time, same place. Maybe we go back to the Sawaki quotes next week. And I wish you all a good week. Thank you for coming. See you.
我一会儿把最后那个给大家翻译一下。
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.